who do I need to build relationships with that can actually further my game, and then going at it.
If you hustle and do the same thing that you did 5 months ago, a year ago, you are not building something.
Work smarter, not harder, in a sense. And that is by identifying what I call force multipliers.
Welcome to Get Your House in Order, where the Medici brothers, investors and entrepreneurs, Cris Auditore and Dr. Philip Zimmermann, discuss timeless principles of success, significance and legacy. A podcast for business owners who want to design a beautiful life and a beautiful business. Sponsored by the one and only exclusive Medici community.
Welcome back to Get Your House in Order. It's great that you are listening or watching. If you are watching, maybe you can see that Cris and I are almost the same height, but that's only because he's sitting on a cushion, which was a big kind of a deal to get this right, so that he actually looks a little taller than he is. I just wanted to point this out because he's my special guest today.
I don't like this chair. This is this chair irritates me because it kind of sinks you in, and I like to kind of sit up, straight, and so.
Yes, but I'm still happy you made it, and we are here. It's actually a beautiful day on the island, so we also could be at the beach, but now we are here together to get our house in order.
Yes.
And I'm excited that you're listening in or watching. The topic for today is forget hustle. This is how you 10x with half the effort. At least, I would say, at least. Cris,
I think that we've chosen this topic because there's a lot of YouTube videos out there and on Instagram and some of these other social media platforms just on where you just need to hustle. And I'm like, I look at some of these guys and they're hustling, and I'm like, well, what the hell are you actually producing? You're running, you're burning a lot of energy here. You're like a Duracell kind of thing. You just keep running, but you're not actually delivering results. And so I think there's almost like a culture that has developed amongst the entrepreneurs that you just need to hustle, and that will make you successful. Well, let me tell you, I know a lot of people that hustle a lot and they have zero money in their bloody bank account. And so I'm like, this can't be the solution. Now, before I talk about how to do it smarter, let me just say, but by nature, myself, I'm a hustler. Okay, so I tell people that no one ever needed to tell me that you need to have goals in your life. I grew up, I had goals before anyone else in school had goals, and these were not my school grades that I wanted to have goals. I wanted to achieve great things in life and in business. Yesterday, I talked with a friend. He said he wanted to. His goal was to retire by 40. Well, I wanted to retire by 30. Money-wise. And so, in a sense, I've always kind of gotten up with energy and wanted to pursue, my career. And so by nature, I'm a hustler, okay? But
before you go into the but, because let's talk about anybody who would be listening to us bashing hustling would laugh because they know that we actually do hustle quite a bit.
Yes.
And I think here's the difference, at least in my understanding, is if you hustle, you need a hustle to get something going. There is no way without work, without really, really hard work, you will not get anything. You will not build anything substantial. It doesn't matter who tells you what. But here's the thing: if you hustle to get out of the job because somebody else can do the job, if that's your mentality, if you hustle and do the same thing that you did 5 months ago, a year ago, you are not building something. Then you are just really hustling without the right purpose, without the right goal. Now, if you are hustling and you're driving something, you're building and designing what you actually then are delegating, or where you actually have other people, employees, to take over. And if that is the goal and that is your whole mentality, then you need that at the end of the day is not more hustle with the same thing, but then you can actually concentrate on doing something else and hustle again. But then it's about working yourself out of the job again in order for you to create more value.
Yes. So back to the point of a culture of hustle, which is obviously very much only part of the story. You need to, you really need to look at the results and what you're aiming towards and how you get yourself out of it. So you already mentioned that. So let's get back to our title here of this podcast, which is really, work smarter, not harder, in a sense. And that is by identifying what I call force multipliers. So in the book, I termed the whole chapter, you need to identify force multipliers or unleash force multipliers. And, I took some of the stories on how Cosimo de' Medici kind of very strategically looked for people that kind of could take his game to a whole another level. So one of the my biggest advices to business owners is that you need to identify people that can kick the ball out of the park, where it's not you kicking the ball, but you actually identifying who it is that can move the needle for you and for your business. And that's just where I've got a ton of stories where I've over the years stumbled into some people who've helped me tremendously, where I've discovered people or where I've raised up leaders who actually do that. So for me, it's all about developing the eye next to, your hustle game here, developing the eye for genius, developing the eye for talent, developing the eye. Where do you find the people that can take your game a whole lot further?
And that is, it starts with kind of really that mindset to know that, yes, you can watch and implement the next productivity hack in your life, and that might, even if it's great, you buy back 3 hours of your time a week, and I'm all for that. But there's compared, and that's why we mentioned that basically there is a whole different game, that a person can 10x what you're trying to improve. So you might still want to kind of get a productivity hack and save 3 hours, but imagine and start thinking about who could actually do what you are doing, even if it's not 100% like you're doing. It's like the old saying, 80% done is freaking awesome if it's not done by you. Yeah, and that can liberate you to have the eye to say, okay, who could be a force multiplier for me in order for me to really leverage. And that's where, we always, in financial terms, we talk about, leveraging your money. But this is where you're leveraging your influence, your output, your productivity on a whole different level. If you don't ask, okay, how can I make something faster or smart or better, but who could actually do it for me? And one, it's not one or the other, but it's a different mindset, a different kind of a picture to really understand that if I get the right person in the right seat doing the right thing, wow, this 10x anything I do.
Well, let's talk about money, because you mentioned the term leverage. So because I come out of real estate investing, buying a lot of multifamily, I very early figured that I'm dependent as an investor on good banking relationships. Now, in Germany, there are lots of people who are in real estate. There are lots of people on the market looking for great deals, and I was just one of them. And I figured out that it actually is quite a tedious process to go through this whole application. If you find a property and you want to secure some finance, there's this month-long process, few months process of actually applying for the loan, putting in all your papers, and then finally getting the approval. And so I remember very early on is that I thought, well, if I'm in the city of Frankfurt, there are all these great banking towers. We've got about 400 banks in the city, so it's kind of a banking capital. I'm one out of many investors that are kind of playing this real estate game. Now, how do I get further faster? And my simple logic was, well, if I get to the right kind of decision makers in the bank. And so I can't even tell you how hard I've worked on identifying what I call force multipliers within the bank in order for me to get quicker to my loan and the decision, and get more money out of them. Because if we're talking about leverage, you want to go and get as much money leverage as you possibly can. Now, fast forward, I'm now doing business banking with 7 major banks. At 4 of them, I'm at the board level. I'm talking directly to people from the board when I'm working on the next project, which gives me an incredible advantage to other investors. But this has not come, kind of as a luck game. This has come through very meticulously analyzing who do I need to build relationships with that can actually further my game, and then going at it. This I would credit part of our financial business success as a family, literally, to building these high-level relationships.
Well, in the last episode, we talked about mentors and what we learned from them. And we mentioned our grandfather, who has been a great mentor, and we learned many lessons. But I still remember being a kid, how the family almost laughed that every time he was visiting, because they were living in South Africa, but he was also doing some investments in Germany. That every time he would visit, he would put on a suit, get his briefcase ready, and he would meet his banker, and would have an appointment to kind of just build that relationship. And the family laughed about it because they did not understand this principle. That it wasn't about, he needed now a deal done, or he needed them now. It was about building that relationship so that when the force multiplier is needed, they are ready. I actually do an exercise with people when it comes to their business, and that exercise is that one thing is to think of new force multipliers, but the other one is already thinking of force multipliers you are taking for granted. There are some people, there are a handful of people in or businesses that you are directly doing business with or for, that if you lose them, one of them, it's going to be not just frustrating, it will put you immediately into a crisis mode. And so you need to identify what the force multipliers are that you already have, that even if you take them for granted, you need to think of a simple strategy of putting on a suit, getting your briefcase ready, and visiting them and building that relationship, nurturing that relationship, so that all of a sudden, not just something turns and all of a sudden you have a big problem.
So one of the ideas that I thought about also prior to this episode here is that really the difference between successful people and unsuccessful people is measured by what kind of rooms do you get into. And let me explain. If you think about it in very simple terms, then if you get access to a room, let's say a boardroom, within an organization, in a company, you can be part of the decision-making process in that boardroom. If you don't get access into that room, other people are making a decision which affects you, and you can't have any input. So in my simple thinking, I've always thought about physical spaces that I want to get myself into in order to have leverage. And so what do I need to do? And this is the next question. What do I need to do in order to enter rooms where I'm at the moment not physically present? Because when I'm in the room, it actually changes the game. So, we just talked about a bank. If you get, if you get access into the boardroom of a bank where the board meets together and makes the big financial decision, and you can be part of that room, either by, being a board member or by being an advisor to the board, you actually can leverage your influence, for your success. And if you're not in it, you can't. So this is basically a simple exercise you can work through. Is which rooms do you want to get into that you're presently not in, and that you need to work yourself into. Another room could be VIP rooms. If you go to a football stadium, there's always kind of the area blocked away for celebrities and VIP people. Well, one thing is kind of it's prestigious. You can put a nice Instagram picture, but that's actually bullshit. That's not why you do it, just to show off. What it gives you is access to the decision makers and to force multipliers, and that's why you actually want to be part of the VIP group, to move the needle. And so this is where I feel a lot of business guys are just being sloppy. They're not thinking through strategically which room do I want to enter, and what kind of people are meeting in that room, and how can I build that relationship with them? Because that is all about building leverage into your business.
Yeah. Well, already two great exercises that people can actually do. I want to use the remaining of this time to actually get a little bit more tactical and talk about a force multiplier that we've believed in since the beginning, and that is actually working with an executive assistant and a personal assistant. Now, I have to just want to frame it this way. When I started my first venture, I had enough money to actually to live on a very bad salary in order to kick this off. Now, I decided to give that salary to actually my first assistant, because I knew that this assistant would be a force multiplier and would actually use that money, and so I could hire her. She was more important and at some point better paid than I was, because I knew she is actually gonna it really was something that I know if I invest into it, it will all of a sudden be a force multiplier for us. So we've believed in all of our ventures in personal assistants, executive assistants, and I know that whenever somebody becomes part of our community, we actually really encourage them. That's one of the leverage pieces, that either if people don't have one, or they don't know how to really effectively work with one, and so let's talk about assistant, and how do you work with your assistant, and how is she a force multiplier in your, and it doesn't have to be a woman, but in your case it is a woman, so how does she really kind of leverage you and your time?
Yeah, so my assistant is Paula, and she basically runs my life, but she runs my life according to my playbook. Two areas that I've 100% delegated to her. One is my email inbox, and number two is my calendar. What does that mean? That means I don't touch any emails. I haven't read any emails for a long time. She is in my inbox, not just her email, but she's in my inbox, and I have set up a system on how she works through my correspondence. And the reason behind that is actually very simple. As you know, I meet a lot of business guys who spend every day 2, 3, 4 hours on emails. And oftentimes it's almost like playing ping pong. Here's a question, and then here's the answer, and they and you can sit all day in front of the bloody screen there and play ping pong with people just on whatever the project is. Now, I've basically decided I don't want to play ping pong with anyone. I need to obviously have a great output, which means, I make sure that I communicate well from my end. That means I dictate things that Paula puts out. I tell her the way, I want things to be handled. But on the other way is that I also have designed play scripts on how inbound messages are being treated in a few different categories. Very, very simply, every morning on the work days, we have a briefing, and she basically lets me know what's in my inbox, what's happening, and then I say this, and then we're done. Sometimes this is literally just a 10-minute conversation, even though I get a lot of emails, because I've trained her on how to treat these different messages. It also actually has come as a great advantage for a lot of people who are communicating with me, because she's very quick, because her only job is to do emails. Okay, so she sits there all day, so she's reading all these while I travel, while I do all kinds of stuff, hang out with people, do podcasts and whatever. She actually sits behind the screen and can be in good communication. So that's number one. Number two is my calendar. I don't touch my calendar. I don't enter in any appointments. In fact, I just follow whatever she puts into the calendar. Now, because have appointments, because there's a lot of travel, there's a lot of things. It's actually, to work on a calendar is quite tedious. Obviously, it comes with also bookings of hotels and flights and all that kind of stuff. But here's basically why I'm describing that. I've delegated 100% of these two activities, 100% of my calendar and 100% of my emails. Here's what I see lots of business guys do wrong, who actually have an assistant. They do partially delegate to their assistant. They partially do it themselves, and they partially delegate. And that's where you come up with a great confusion, because then who does what? What's the playbook? It's very confusing. And then they get frustrated because didn't my assistant take care of that? And it doesn't actually live with them. So the only way I think you can do it is literally by handing it over 100%. And actually, it gives me a lot more time. As I say, I don't spend time behind screens.
Yeah. So before I forget, we actually have in our self-managing business program, we actually have a playbook for how to work with an assistant. It's a 30-40 page document on how I train my assistant and how my assistant works with me. If anybody wants this, just write support@medicilegacy.com and we'll actually send you the doc, and you can apply it to you just to see really the detail of tactics. Normally we are often working high level, but with personal and executive assistant, you really want it tactical, you really want it down to the nit so that they can actually follow it, so that you actually also at some point have multiple assistants working with and for you. But the idea is really the change is that you at some point one mentor asked me, said, Philip, how much is your hour worth? How much do you charge an hour? And because I don't charge by hour, I was thinking at that point back in the day, I thought it's 300 euros an hour. I would say if you do the math, 300 hours, and then he was like, okay, good. Okay, you never are allowed to do anything for less than 100 euro. And I looked at him and was like, what do you mean? It's like, if you're worth 300 euros, why you can hire out anything you do that is less than 100 euro. That was kind of his rule. A third of what you're making, use it as a budget, kind of a thumbnail to then hire it out. Because the thing is, number one, it gives you leverage, and number two, you actually get space back in your head. I mean, and that for business owners, we so often talk about working on your business, not in your business. The key is to have the mental space to do that, to actually do deep thinking work. But because you are constantly on inbox, social media, WhatsApp, communication, you are basically, if you don't have an assistant, you are the assistant. Okay, now you can put that next to being the CEO. You can say personal assistant, and if that doesn't do the trick,
100%.
You really have to understand that. That's why that's the easiest way to leverage it. But it's so important of what you said, that you have to do it with a clean cut of.
So I even went so far. Paula, actually, she also has my WhatsApp. So and sometimes people are shocked. They think they write me a personal message, and then Paula responds, and I do that very much on purpose, because I've seen a lot of guys who kind of then start delegating one system, but then people kind of sneak in the back door. I let people know. Now, I'm a very relational person. I want to be relational, which means I also want to have good communication. But in order to manage all the relationships that I have, I need help in that. And so I've created that system. Yeah, I think that's a force multiplier. It gives me mental space, headspace. For me is probably the most important.
Yeah.
Big thoughts, big thinking. Big strategy. This is what I want to spend my time on, and having the space to meet with very smart people. I travel a lot around the world, and I enjoy meeting up with people that are smarter than me, that are further ahead than me, and where I can learn, where I can have the conversation. But if I'm constantly stressed out over my emails and my calendar and my bookings and this and that, or operations, we have so many people employed within our organizations. I don't want to deal with that, and so I've set up systems on how to do that.
So we talked about these two important pieces: the right person and the right playbook. And if these two come together, basically magic can happen. If you have a playbook with the system procedures of how you want a job to be done, and that doesn't just have to be working with your assistant. It can be any part, any department in your business. If you have the right playbook and then the right person who can actually execute that playbook, you can work yourself out of the daily operations. And I mean,
which should be the goal for every business owner, is to get out of the operational world. And I'm just shocked at how many don't have this as the end goal of setting up their business. That they just enjoy kind of, I don't know, we talked at the beginning, we talked about the hustle. They just enjoy kind of running. Well, I enjoy working as well. So it's not like I don't want to work, but I don't want to do stuff that other people can do perhaps even better than me. We just talked about the emails. Paula writes nicer emails than I do. Let me put she because she crafts the emails. Sometimes I'm on my iPhone and in the past, and she actually can do that a whole lot better.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole idea behind our coaching program, developing a self-managing business. If you go to freemeup.info, you actually can download a whole framework on how to build up a self-managing business. But we also have a whole program, a whole coaching around really helping business owners to do exactly that, because there's strategic elements that you need so that you actually can get out of the operation, so you can work on the strategic pieces. And so if you go to Medici.com/coaching, you can find out about our program, or you just write us. I would be happy to show you more information. But in the end, that really is a force multiplier, is the right assistant with the right playbook. So I hope, if you don't have an assistant yet, that you are hiring one. If you have hired one, you really think through and take a day to think through of how you want to work with her in order for you to get that mental space back, that focus time, that deep work time, that you can only work on only the things that you can do. And then we'll hear each other or see each other on the next episode.